All right, guys, so what we're doing today, you shouldn't have to use calculators. You shouldn't have to do a lot of thinking or a lot of work. It's a pattern, and once we know those patterns, it should be something that's real quick and easy for you to do. Now, because also as I work through these problems, I did attach a Google Doc. You are able to like copy and paste a couple of the special characters. You'll find out what I mean very quickly here. As you're working through that. But if you would like to submit it as a Google Doc, just because basically you should be able to look at the triangle and know the answers. Please make sure you clearly label though, because there's going to be two sides of the triangle you need to find. So like if it has side A and side B, make sure either on your homework or the Google Doc you write like A equals this, B equals this. Don't just write two numbers. I won't know which one is which and I won't give you credit. So section 8.5 is about some special right triangles that we have. Now we have a few special right triangles because we see them a lot like when we're doing buildings or, when we're working in upper level trigonometry. It's just things that we work with a lot. Those two special right triangles would be a 30, 60, 90 triangle. And part of the reason we call it that, do not write this 5. Sorry, if you already copied it down, my fault. Do not copy that 5. We see these a lot, like again, in building and different things like that. And if you notice, you see the 3 angles labeled. Now, I labeled them on mine. It will not always be labeled on the homework. Okay, it will not always be labeled like this. One of the two of them has to be, but both 30 and 60 will not necessarily be labeled. So don't write this down because I'm going to do some work and we're going to kind of go through things quickly. Would you agree that if I put this 5 here and then put the word HYP here for hypotenuse, hopefully you knew that was that, and I told you we have to use 30 degrees, you would say 5 is opposite of it and we're looking for the hypotenuse. So if you set up the ratio, we would end up having to do 5 divided by the sine of 30. All right, so let me type that in my calculator quick. Of course, if you're using Desmos, make sure and following along with me, make sure you switch it over to degrees, not radians. So if I type in 5 divided by the sine of 30, the answer it tells me is 10. Okay. So I found that to be 10. Now, remember I said this is a pattern. This is something you should follow. And part of the reason I didn't want you to write a 5 there is because I randomly just picked 5 for the first example. But what if I picked 8? Well, think about this. 8 is still opposite 30. So this time on my calculator, I would just type 8 divided by the sine of 30 instead of 5 divided by the sine of 30. And this time I got an answer of 16. Okay, guys, listen to this. The first time it was 5, and I got an answer of 10. The second time it was 8, I got an answer of 16. Like I said, this should be a nice shortcut. Can anybody tell me what you can do to go from 5 to 10? And say the same answer to go from 8 to 16? Hopefully you're saying the word double. And so I am going to ask you to write these on your, this is the pattern I'm supposed to follow. If I know the side across from 30 degrees, by the way, I would also like you to write the word short there. That is the short side. It is the shortest of the 3 sides. Again, it has to do with the fact that it's across from my 30-degree angle. Okay, across from my 60, would you put middle? And then across from your 90, you're going to write HYP for hypotenuse. By the way, we could also say it is the longest side. Remember how I said that about the hypotenuse? All right. So if we are given our short side and say our short side is just X, I am going to double it to find the hypotenuse. In math, to double something, you do 2 times. So would you please write a 2X on the hypotenuse? If this short side is X, I double it to get this one. Now, we could go through some math as well. Some of that math is a little bit of algebra 2 that we've talked about a little bit. And like if we get that square root symbol, what we should do if we don't know the nice number. I think we've talked about it a little bit, but I'm just going to tell you the pattern. So the short side is X. The hypotenuse is 2X. The middle side is going to be a little bit kind of a weird answer. And I know right now as I'm writing this, it makes no sense. But the middle side is going to be something that says X, and then it's called the radical 3 or square root of 3. We refer to it as both of them. So again, your shortest side is just a plain old x. First of all, I want you to think of the number 1 in front of there. Does everybody see that number 1? Do not actually write it. Notice there are 3 different angles and there are 3 different sides. One of them has 1x, one of them has 2x, and one of them sort of has 3x, but the 3 has to be under that radical. And by the way, sometimes when I say it that way, people are like, well, won't 3x be bigger than 2x? 3x is bigger than 2x, but radical 3x is not bigger. All right? So here's what we would do. If we were in class right now, I would call on somebody and say, what's your favorite number? Let's say they said their favorite number was 4, and I put it right here where my finger was. If I put that 4 on the short side, you shouldn't need a calculator for this at all. Since this is the short side, you are going to double 4 to get the hypotenuse. 4 times 2 is 8. So I'm going to write 8 on the hypotenuse. This is the tricky one because the hypotenuse, the value changes. The other side is going to get a 4 again. They're both going to be the same number. Except this one was just a plain old 4. This 4 should have a radical 3 attached to it. That's square root of 3, and we write it afterwards. So we would get this 4, 8, and 4 radical 3. Now again, because I gave you the 4, that would have been printed tonight on the homework. You would have to write like A equals 8 and B equals 4 radical 3 on your homework tonight. So as your first checkpoint, let's see if I write a 3 on the short leg and I tell you to find the values of x and y. Would you please pause the video if 3 is the short leg and these two are x and y? Please be careful. You have to be very specific about which one is x and which one is y. Click over the Google Meet. Come back here when I say you can. All right, so that's if we're given the short side. I would like to do 2 more examples because it does show up on the homework this way. What if I said I need somebody who I'm going to call on whose favorite number is kind of a big even number? And they said, oh, I like the number 30. All right, so would you please write this? But if you notice, 30 is on my hypotenuse. 30 should be the biggest number. Please think. Over here on this problem, when I started with 4 and I had to double it to get 8, what would happen if I would start with the 8? If I would start with the 8, I would have to take half of it to get 4. So if you're given the hypotenuse, take half of it to get the short side. That would be 15. And then this is the part where people always kind of question me, but once people get the pattern, they're like, oh yeah, since this is 15, this is also going to have a 15 on it, but that 15 is also going to have the value of radical 3. And so let's do one more. I'm going to call on anybody who wants to tell me their favorite number, and somebody said the number 7. So let's say they said the number 7, but I put it here on that middle length, the one that already has the radical 3 on it. Please make sure you realize this one should be across from the 60, okay? I did not give you any where it gave you a real weird radical number across from the 30 or across from the hypotenuse, on the hypotenuse across from the right angle. I only gave it to you on the side where it's supposed to be. So 7 radical 3, what number is in front of the radical 3? 7, that's the one I get to rewrite down here. And then what do I have to do with that short side to find the hypotenuse? Thank you, double it, and so your answer is 14. Guys, that's kind of how quick half the homework should go because that's one of my patterns, okay? One of my patterns is that 30, 60, 90. The other one is this 45, 45, 90. Now, if these two sides angles are 45, what have we realized before about if 2 angles are equal? Oh yeah, these 2 sides are equal. So this one's kind of nice. You sort of, and I'm just going to tell you guys the pattern this time. Again, there could be a little bit of Pythagorean's theorem and upper level radical simplification we could do, but if these 2 have to be the same, they're both going to get the same value. Again, in a minute, I'll do it where like if one is 6, the other is 6. This is the nice part about this one. Since these 2 are the same, there's only one last side. That means there's only a second side. And it's kind of like on the other paper. It's going to have an X on it, but we have to make it a little bit bigger. And so this is the weird thing. This one has a radical 2 in it. So these 2 are just plain old X, and then this one is X radical 2. kind of like the other paper. That means for this pattern, it could go really quick because if there's a 3 here, it would just be 3, 3, 3, radical 2. If there was an 8 here, it would be 8, 8, 8, radical 2. That's how quick this pattern goes. So let me call on somebody and say, what's your favorite number? I heard a 5. So if you draw a 45, 45, 90 triangle and the 5 shows up there, please think about this. The 2 legs have to be the same. So since that's a 5, that's going to be a 5. And on the 45, 45, 90, the hypotenuse is the one that has that radical, that square root symbol on it. So I'm going to write a 5 again, but that one would have 5 radical 2. Again, make sure, because on the homework it would have said something like A and B for each of those. And so please make sure when you're doing the homework for this problem, you would have said A equals 5 and B equals 5 radical 2. Because if you don't tell me which one is which, I might not know and think you got them switched around. So let's say I called on somebody else and they said their favorite number was 11. All right, well, what if I put that up across the bottom? It doesn't matter. 11 is still one of the legs. So if this was 11, this would be 11 and 11 radical 2. Okay, that is honestly how fast this pattern goes. That same number sort of gets written down 3 times. It's just this hypotenuse has a radical 2 on it. All right, so what would happen on this last one? Let's say somebody says their favorite number is 6. And when I turn it around, that 6 happens to already be attached with a radical 2. And again, just like the other one, I didn't give you any crazy ones where it was just a plain old 6. Technically, we could get a plain old 6 there. If we were meeting in person, I would maybe take a little bit more time to go through it. But I want you to get to know the pattern today pretty well. Maybe on Thursday, we'll talk about it as well. What number is in front of your radical 2? Then your 2 legs right here are both 6. And even though they're the same, I still want you to know that you should write like x equals 6 and y equals 6 or whatever the 2 values were. All right, so I did not write an answer down, questions down on that last one. This homework, guys, the video was pretty short. I know I went pretty quick. Remember, you can always review and go through it. There's those 2 patterns, the different patterns we learned. Let me find the 2 main papers again. Sorry. Please remember, if it's a 30, 60, 90 triangle, it's x with the square root of 3, and 2x as the hypotenuse as the longest side. If it is a 45, 45, 90 triangle, the 2 legs are the same, and the hypotenuse just has a radical 2 on it. That's how quick and easy your homework should go. Please click over back to the Google Meet to tell me that you're done and that you're starting to work on there. Or maybe you have a question or 2 and you're like, should it really be that easy? And I can hopefully talk to you about how easy it should be and how quick the homework should go. So see you over in the Google Meet. Bye.